Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Stephen.
And this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back to another race review podcast. Last Sunday's race was obviously the Belgian GP. Yesterday we gave our driver rating, so if you haven't already, make sure you go and check out that video where we give the drivers a rating out of 10 for their race performance. But yes, today we run through all the teams and kind of talk in a little bit more detail about their races, some kind of themes from the season, just kind of what we're talking about, maybe kind of make some conclusions from there. Stephen might get a bit angry at Bottas. You never know. In terms of... Guarantee, certainly on that front. But yes, guys, that is what you can look forward to in the podcast, as well as obviously us giving our drive of the day and our race rating as well. So, before we get into this though, if you haven't already or you are new around here and want to kind of keep up to date with all our latest content, please do drop us a subscribe, that red button below. It does kind of help us out, so we would massively appreciate it if you would help us out on that front. But we're going to get into it and we're going to start off with Williams. And again, Williams, I think their pace was like 2 and 2.5 seconds quicker than it was in practice last year.
Fair enough.
So, I suppose that's improvement.
Trying to find a positive. Latifi beat Magnussen.
Yeah, George Russell qualified well again in P15. He did drop at the start. We don't know.
He normally does.
Yeah, we don't know what it would have done, but probably if he'd finished ahead of Grosjean would have been a good race for Williams, because the Alfa Romeos looked like they had a little bit more. But
fastest Ferrari out there.
Yeah, obviously Giovinazzi binning it in the wall. We'll come on to that in the Alfa Romeo. But yeah, it was an unlucky weekend for George Russell.
Yep.
Couldn't really do anything with that incident, just a tyre flying towards him, and it was just, thankfully, it wasn't that serious for him, other than just kind of trying to avoid it and crash into it. And Latifi, like I said, beat Magnussen, beat a Haas, didn't finish last in a race where the Williams didn't really seem to have any pace.
Yeah.
So, that's probably Williams, to be fair.
That's Williams in a nutshell.
There's not really much to say. Yeah.
One finished, another retirement for George. Yeah.
I suppose what we probably should say is they have been bought since the last race.
Yes.
So, hoping going forward that this obviously gives them the financial backing that's needed for them to go on and improve. Obviously keeping the Williams name, but yet now no longer owned by Williams.
Yes.
So fingers crossed it won't be this season, but maybe a bit in 2021 and definitely in 2022. Hopefully we can see
a couple of years time.
Yeah, Williams coming back up.
But yeah. Do you stop by at Haas next?
Oh, because Alfa Romeo had gone up, so put Haas down. Yeah, we can stop at Haas. Representing.
Yeah, sorry. It's
the boys!
Just stuck the same order as yesterday.
USA!
But yeah, Haas, Roman Grosjean P15, Kevin Magnussen P17. After making up 5 places, Magnussen made up on the first lap, as usual. Lost them all, went to the back.
Yep.
But that's Haas. They've got a Ferrari handicap in their car, which makes them go very slowly. And they can't challenge, they can't compete. Out of them, Ferrari and Alfa Romeo, they've got the worst chassis because they're the newest team and lowest budget. So they just struggle, and they haven't got the engine to compete with anyone else. So they're just... The only way they're competitive is Magnussen on the starts, but he just loses everything. So, yeah. There's no positives. Okay, Roman Grosjean did try to kill anyone this week, but...
I think at the moment... that is a positive. Oh my God.
The last couple races, he's been doing his best.
Jeez, you went in on him there. But yeah, I suppose with Haas, it's just survival at the moment. They've committed with signing the Concord Agreement, like all the teams have done, to the next 5 years in Formula One.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just survival till the budget cap comes in 2022, where they can hopefully, realistically, the grids be closer and compete on weekends. I think they've just kind of gone, screw it.
They just got to hope Ferrari give them an engine.
It's kind of like a common theme with all the teams. I kind of feel like there's a load of teams just treading water and getting by. Just like, well, we have to be here to compete, but we're really looking at 2022.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's
all I have to say on Haas. Didn't have any problems, didn't have any incidents during the race. They just sat at the back and did nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ferrari, I guess, is probably next if we're going on this basis of changing it up. So we'll get the team shirts out of the way. Ferrari were, I believe, 1.3 seconds slower than what they were last year. Obviously, we know this is now very obvious why Anthony Davidson, bless him, was still trying to go. You can see how much slower they are. Everyone's confused by this. No, they're not.
It's the engine.
It's the engine.
It's that loophole that got patched up.
Exactly. You know what? When they had it, it was perfectly legal. I don't think people. Obviously, I think I've seen Christian Horner being like, "Well, you know, Ferrari using that engine's made us look worse last year." Like, well, okay, you could have got second in the constructors and a few extra million. Which obviously helps in terms of that, but I don't think that would have massively helped Red Bull this year. But yeah, Ferrari, it's embarrassing. The next 3 races are going to be embarrassing. On a straight line speed, it's awful. I think commentary summed it up, wasn't it? Martin Brundle said it would have summed it up if Ferrari put themselves out of the race fighting for 13th and 14th.
Yeah. Well, Ferrari.
I don't know.
You can't really say anything about them, really.
Let's be okay. Ferrari. For what they are, and for how much money they spend, and for how long they've been in the sport, and the 2 drivers that they have at their disposal, it's an embarrassment for where they are. And I don't care if your engine was massively hindered. 1.3 seconds. To be so heavily reliant, and obviously they've gone all the way because they were like, oh, well, no one's going to call us out on this. So they were arrogant on that front that you'd go something that's like, well, that's very on the line, in type of thing. So, you know, they've done something that was on the line and relied on so much. I mean, 1.3 seconds, like that engine was off, and it wasn't that bad. It's almost like they were like, oh, well, we've got this, so we don't have to worry about the engine now. We can just worry about that. And then everyone's been developing and progressing in this time, and then now they've got taken away and gone, we maybe should have been still improving the engine so it wasn't as bad. Because, you know, 2017, 2018, they were still inferior to Mercedes' engine.
Yeah.
But they were closer and the second best car on the grid still. And they've built a car completely around having that high-powered engine. So they went for a kind of more draggy car because they knew they'd have the engine power to cope with that. But now they don't have the engine power and a really draggy car.
So the car's completely uncontrollable. And you have Alfa Romeo being them, which we'll come on to next. But yeah.
It is embarrassing for a team like Ferrari. And they've got to take a serious look in the mirror. And is Binotto the right guy for the job to lead them forward?
Yeah. Or are there other positions in that Ferrari team that are making the wrong decisions and he's just the fool guy?
Potentially. Regardless, with Binotto at the helm, they've gone from potential title challenges in 2017-18. Obviously, Marchione died in that time as well, and they got rid of Benet, and I don't think if you brought back Arifa Benet it would solve all the issues, because I think everything's gone drastically downhill. But he just doesn't seem that pinnacle leader, and a lot of people are saying that there's a lot. His job role is like huge. He's got so much on him, and there isn't really much shared responsibility going around. I believe Binotto is an amazing behind-the-scenes guy, but in the spotlight guy, he's not really that guy. And you can tell probably with the relationship between him and Toto Wolff that
Toto hates him.
he just slaughters him every chance he can get in the press. Ferrari. That's pretty much it, isn't it?
Italian media will be calling for his head.
Definitely. Especially
probably already are.
If they finish behind both Alfa Romeos in Monza.
That could be it, actually.
Because Monza was Giovinazzi's best result. Well, no, they had Brazil, didn't they, where they finished 4th and 5th.
Yeah.
But it was his best result for a long while. His first major points of the season, I think. So yeah, that's not beyond the realms of possibility with what Kimi did.
Yeah, it's probably a saving grace that the Tifosi aren't going to be there.
Well, they're allowing some fans to Mugello.
Yeah, but okay. That could get nasty. But yeah, that's Ferrari. I'm sorry if you're a Ferrari fan. Alfa Romeo, though, Kimi Raikkonen pulling out his best performance of the season.
Kimi!
Beated both Ferraris on merit, on absolute merit. He even overtook Sebastian Vettel. I loved it on the Kemmel Straight. No DRS, same compound tyres. He just bossed it. And yeah, Kimi, he's still got it. He's not past it. He can still... Okay, he loves Spa, so obviously he's going to always have a great race at Spa. But he just shows the quality's still there. It hasn't gone. Even at good old 40. So he's still
the
40?
aging Finn.
Was he 41 now?
No, I think he's still 40.
Still 40. Great race for
I can just,
Kimi.
because I know they're good mates, I can just imagine like Sebastian Vettel being frustrated like after the race. Like Sebastian Vettel's press conference was like quite funny. I think Binotto said it was a one-off, and Seb was like, well, if he said that, I guess that's true. But he was obviously would have been down. I can just imagine Kimi just like coming up behind and going, "Do you like the move, Seb?" But yeah, Kimi Raikkonen was brilliant. But differing fortunes.
For Antonio Giovinazzi, another driver error from him. Yeah, I think never going to get that Ferrari seat, is he? We see it so often. Maybe that's a harsh comment, but he's one of the drivers on the grid that's prone to a spin. In the F1 play, I normally put Giovinazzi as the first to enter. He does it so often.
You would have been it's so right if it wasn't for signs.
I know. But it's a spot you hardly see errors from. You don't see many people spin out there. And he hasn't really picked up too much of the curb. I think Kimi took more curb, but kept it together, and he's just completely lost it.
I think Martin Brundle literally just said she's been greedy on the throttle.
Yeah.
And just lost the back end, and then was going, and then corrected really late, and then corrected too much, and then just completely lost it and binned it. And
thankfully he is okay, because it looked like a very bad crash. And it was completely, the back end of the car looked completely smashed up. So glad he's okay, but you got to stop doing this, Giovinazzi. I can't see a future for him if these errors don't get cleaned up.
I would probably go now and say his seat's gone.
After that.
Barring an amazing performance in Monza and then going on for the rest of the season, I just think with Schwartzman winning the F2 sprint race again yesterday, I think that put him back in championship lead. I'm not sure on that front, but it is so close in there. But you've got both Eilert and Schwartzman knocking on the door there. Mick Schumacher again, he's still in the mix. They've got three drivers who potentially can go into that seat. And Giovinazzi was improving at the back end of last year. I was like, you know what? We've got to give Giovinazzi credit. First half of the season, he was finding his feet, and then actually when the car was more difficult, he was doing well and starting to compete with Raikkonen in qualifying. And I think with Raikkonen, he's still up there in qualifying. His qualifying is actually pretty good, but in races, it's night and day between him and Kimi Raikkonen.
The errors. Every race we have an error from him. And some not as bad, but we see these big spins. And yeah, that's my Alfa Romeo review. Kimi's still got it. Giovinazzi's still got the spins.
Oh yeah, in terms of that. But we'll lift up to, well actually, we'll introduce a bit of positivity before we talk about Daniel Kvyat. So Pierre Gasly, what would have been an incredibly emotional weekend for him. Lost his friend Antoine Hubert, who obviously tragically died in the F2 feature race in 2019. And it was always going to be a tough weekend for Pierre. And he carried on with what has been a brilliant season for him. I can only really think of was it first British Grand Prix where his tyres went, or the 70th anniversary one? I think it was 70th anniversary GP where his tyres...
Because he had a good first race, and then we were all thinking he'd have a good second Silverstone, but it didn't quite come together.
But he's been incredible, and he finished P8, but it could have been an even better day because the safety car really came at the wrong time for him because he was on the hard compound, and people could pit and then go on to the hards and then get to the end of the race. But obviously he couldn't pit again for another set of hards. People were like, why didn't Gasly come in? Well, he couldn't come in because you have to use two compounds. And we all saw, with Alex Albon struggling on those mediums towards the end, it just wouldn't have gone right. So he had to then go long on those hards, use the mediums, and work his way through the field. And he managed to overtake Perez late on, and both racing points late on. And it was a fantastic performance from Pierre. And, the conversation will come up. And if Red Bull do decide to change their drivers at the end of this season, Pierre's certainly in the frame again if they want to go internally.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's people talking about now, well, he had his chance, go from there. Well, yeah, he had a chance, but
he's half a season.
he's gone away and worked harder at it. And you've got to say the main kind of problems that probably Red Bull had with Pierre Gasly, he's worked really hard to improve those. Yeah. I would say.
That overtake up through Arouge and Radion, Jesus.
that was so ballsy.
Yeah, Checo's squeezing him against the wall, holding it together, and then go side by side up there and make the move is incredible.
That was that will probably be on a highlights clip. Well, we often think, obviously, when races are happen, they don't often get put, and if it's not like big drivers. But, that will probably be something that, whenever F1 are going through corners and clips of it.
Pre-race build-up.
Yeah, obviously, they had the Mark Webber-Alonso one, before in terms of that. But that will be one that's in the highlight reels for one of the best overtakes in Spa, especially, I think, for Pierre Gasly, because that's the corner.
That
very corner was Antoine. You wouldn't have blamed him if he was a little bit more conservative there and waited to do it on the Kemmel Straight. But he was like, I'm getting this overtaking done. He knew that was what Red Bull's criticism was of him, is the fact that he doesn't make overtakes. And now he makes really good, clean overtakes. And his overtaking is a really good strength now, I would say.
I was going to say, that move just sums up his progression from his time at Red Bull. And hopefully, if he gets a second chance, you can carry that through.
Yeah, definitely, I think, certainly on that front. But we look at Daniel Kvyat, and, the Red Bull situation, we don't know what it's going to be. Whether they seem really positive. We'll talk about that with Alex Albon when we get there. But I think Daniel Kvyat this is maybe a weekend that might finally be the nail in the coffin that says his time in F1 is over.
Oh, just full stop. Time in F1 is over.
The problem is, I don't see any of the other seats really going for him.
No.
Unless, like a Haas.
Haas is the only one.
I can't, or Alfa Romeo with the Ferrari link, but I don't know. I don't necessarily seem like he's not doing anything that is going, if Red Bull drop me, sign me, type of thing. And Yuki Tsunoda's doing anything like first time. What was that, round 7? It was the first time that he'd out-qualified Gasly, and he finished behind him.
Yeah.
And Gasly was like on a different level.
Yeah.
He just seems to be able to get something out of that car that Kvyat can't. And Kvyat's been unlucky, obviously, a couple of times this year. And I think he just seems one of those guys where it just doesn't fall into place for him.
Mm.
Now, I mean, I feel like he should have been given that Red Bull opportunity last summer. But since then, his form has just tailed off a cliff.
Yeah.
And it's been some unluckiness, some mistakes, and it just, everything kind of goes into a F1 career that kind of fizzles out, which is a shame because, you know, he wasn't dropped from Red Bull on, I know he was technically on performance, but, you know, he'd beaten Daniel Ricciardo on points in the previous season, and he'd had a podium just a couple of races before getting dropped.
Yeah.
Which is obviously more than Gasly and Albon have managed in their time in Red Bull. So it feels unlucky, but I feel like it's just, it's going to fizzle out. And he's just going to be one of those guys in F1 where it just didn't work out for him for whatever reason.
So, yeah, you can see him grabbing a Haas seat. But even with Alfa Romeo, if Kimi walked, maybe they go for experience and go for Kvyat. But I can't see him with the Ferrari Juniors getting a seat at Alfa Romeo. Or even at Haas, because the Ferrari Junior make it Haas. The Ferrari links. Yeah, it's difficult.
With Daniel, I do think the writing is unfortunately on the wall for him.
And if Tsunoda does get top 4, he's taking Kvyat's seat 100%.
Yeah. 100%. Yuki, with that Honda backing in Japan, you know, they love having a guy from their home country in a seat powered by their car. So they're certainly going to be giving Yuki every opportunity. But AlphaTauri, that's them done.
Bam. Who are we moving on to next?
Racing Point.
Racing Point. If we did a preview of Spa, we would be saying, great race for them. Mercedes power unit, W10, they're going to have a great race, flying and maybe challenging Red Bull for a podium. 9th and 10th. On to the next team. Jeez. It was a bad weekend. They looked okay in practice, and they qualifying. They got both to.
I'm just really confused. Actually, Perez hadn't had a great race. Lance had a trademark good start by jumping his teammate. I think. I think Perez had out qualified him.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
But you know, the first race of the season, where Lando Norris got a podium, that should have been Sergio Perez.
Yeah.
And they screwed him on safety car by not pitting him and just leaving him as a sitting duck. And again, when everyone pitted, I don't know, I didn't know the gaps and margins, but I'm assuming this is what happened. They didn't back themselves through a double stack, or they were too close that a double stack wasn't possible and Perez would have lost positions in the pit anyway.
Mm.
So as Lance had track position, he then got priority in the pit. So he was the one who got pitted, and then Checo had to stay out. But even then, I'm convinced that there was a first round of pit stops, and then Verstappen and
Because
Mercedes.
Lando pitted on the second lap of safety car.
So I just don't understand. I just don't understand.
But even with the bad strategy call, we just look at Lance Stroll in ninth. They still way off the pace.
And they were way off the pace all weekend.
Was sabotaged by the strategy, but Racing Point, I don't know where they were. As soon as they didn't go for a second run in the top 10 shootout, I was like, what's going on here? Why aren't they just chucking the cars out there and hoping for the best? Something wasn't right for Spa and Racing Point.
Well, okay, so we're going to do a video before Monza. It'll come out on the Friday or Saturday with our new topic videos that is looking at comparing the engines and where they're ranked, the Mercedes, Ferraris, Renaults and Honda power unit. Now, a kind of clue into that is the Racing Points use a year-old Mercedes engine. So it is actually the W10 engine.
It's just a full W10.
Basically. And it's not the engine that Mercedes are using. So is it just the fact that Spa, Monza and, Mugello should be such power unit dominated tracks that they lose out, although they have the aero performance, because it is such power hungry circuits, and the Renault and Hondas clearly have made big improvements in those areas.
Yeah.
That they just couldn't compete on that level because their power unit is just a year old, so it's always a struggle for them to compete.
Yeah, it's just bizarre. That's kind of the only reasonable explanation, to just say they're on the older engine. It was a bad weekend for Racing Point. 9th and 10th. It's shocking.
But it does, again, still make that third in the Constructors so interesting.
Yeah.
I think everyone just kind of presumes it's Racing Points, but then they'll have a race, and then Renault will have a good race, and McLaren will have a good race, and then Ferrari will have some good points, but then...
Come on now. They're not going to be going for third.
Sixth at best, surely. But yes, certainly interest in that one. Charles Leclerc's podium should be able to get them to sixth ahead of the AlphaTauri. But, McLaren.
Yeah, that's Racing Point. Bam. They were terrible. Strategy, car performance, qualifying, driver errors. Checo nearly taken out Gasly. We mentioned it.
I feel we've had a very moany podcast so far. We're just like, I hate everything.
It was Spa and it was a bad race, and I'm going to rip into anyone that deserves to be ripped into.
Watch out. Stephen is off the leash and he's coming for you. But McLaren, Carlos Sainz,
I can't rip into them, actually.
Unlucky. Yeah. McLaren, I think they're just where we expect McLaren to be. Carlos unlucky, qualified well, although behind Lando, I believe. Or was he ahead of?
Good question. He was ahead, because Lando was P10.
Yes. No, he was. Correct. So it had been a good qualifying performance, and building on obviously his strong performance in circuit to Catalonia, it would have been really interesting to see. And actually seeing how Albon dropped off later in the race, could have been potentially looking at a P6 where he qualified.
Yeah, he kind of...
No, did he? He might have been P7.
He was finished P7, but he was in that...
No, that's where Lando finished. I mean, Carlos Sainz qualified. Was he P6 or P7? I can't remember. Should probably know this. But anyway, he was unlucky with this engine exhaust problem, stinted his momentum, and then got to watch Ferrari all weekend and probably, go in a corner and cry somewhere.
Yeah.
But Lando, steady, I would say. It was just unremarkably consistent.
Yeah. Good tyre management, because he had the pace towards the end. Made up a couple of places. I think he lost out slightly to the Ocon Albon thing. So it was like, them fighting brought Norris into it, but then Ocon making the move on the last lap just meant Norris didn't have time to get his run at Albon. But yeah, steady, made up 2 positions overall. Yeah, like you said, it was just steady. You can't really say much more than that.
No, it was the best I think they could have hoped for. We've said all year that McLaren's race pace hasn't really been there. Again, I think it's just going to be something that we keep saying over the next year and a half. Teams are looking forward to 2022. Yeah. So they're treading water and they're going through the motions. And McLaren feel like a team going through the motions. Got a decent car. They're going to have a look next year how the Mercedes power unit kind of fits in. It'd be interesting. I presume they will still have to use a year older Mercedes engine next year. But with the 2022 regulations, with that deal, means that they have to have, the customer teams have to be given the prime engine. They can't use
same engine.
They can't be given a older spec of the engine as a customer team. So that will certainly make things more interesting on that front. But yeah, that's probably all to say on McLaren.
Yeah. Moving on to Renault now. P4 and P5. A fantastic result for them. Best driver of the seasons for probably both of them, really. Ricciardo just narrowly missing out on 2 laps away probably from a podium. But obviously Max was on full tyre conservation mode. But yes, narrowly missing out. Got his fastest lap. Got the extra championship point. And Esteban Ocon with a P5. As we mentioned, last lap move on Albon. He got stuck behind him a bit. He had... So
I've just been attacked by Tarek, actually. There's his tail just constantly going... Ooh. But yes, do carry on about Renault. I hope everyone was paying attention to what Stephen was saying.
Esteban Ocon, P5, got held up a bit by Albon, but he made the move. Great result for Ocon, finally getting the most out of that Renault engine. He's still quite far behind Ricciardo, but you know, he's progress. You can see progress there. And yeah, Ricciardo, fantastic P4. And he will probably make an appearance in Driver of the Day. I don't want to fully say he's got Driver of the Day, but...
Shh, don't give any spoilers.
He was, as usual, Ricciardo brings excitement.
Renault on the power circuits look like they have a great car.
Yeah.
Their aero isn't quite the same. They gambled on a low downforce setup with no rain. The rain did not come. And they were able to do it. I think I was talking to Tinnis. We were talking about, funnily enough, a debate between Albon and his performance in the race. But I think he said in the Sector 1 splits that the Renaults and actually AlphaTauri was 0.5 seconds quicker than the Red Bull of Alexander Albon.
Huh.
So they gambled on that, and that really paid off. And yeah, Ricciardo's tyre management was really impressive. To be so close to Max. Obviously, Max was in kind of chill mode.
Yeah.
He'd kind of just been like, let's just consolidate the points.
Mm.
I think he's in interviews just been saying, we understand where we are.
Yeah.
And it's just not where it needs to be.
Yeah. But yeah, fantastic weekend from Renault.
Mm.
Progress there with the engine, the team. Looking good for Renault going into Monza, which they may... Maybe they be challenging for a podium at Monza. You never know. And Tara's coming back.
Yeah, Tara's just kind of... She's a really big Daniel Ricciardo fan. Isn't that right, Tara? Aren't you happy about Daniel Ricciardo? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, maybe not. Maybe she wasn't as big as Daniel Ricciardo fan as we thought might be the case. But on to Red Bull. And I'm going to keep it short because I basically said what I needed to say about Alex Albon yesterday in the driver ratings. He continues to not put in the performances that are required for Red Bull. I know a lot of people think that he was stuffed on strategy again and didn't understand what they were doing on the medium compound. But because he finally qualified in a place where he could be in a decent position because Ricciardo put in a bit of a mega lap.
Yep.
So that was fair. But then in the race, didn't put in the performance that was needed to again help his thing. And Lewis Hamilton is now coming out and saying in interviews, going, Max is on his own. It's tough when you're on your own and, you don't have a teammate supporting you kind of against two other cars. It really compromises you on strategy. So that was a sly little dig. Obviously, Albon will probably be very upset about that because he will feel his 2 podium opportunities were cruelly taken away from him.
By Hamilton, who's now mocking him.
Yeah.
Well, not mocking him, but saying he's not good enough because he should be supporting his teammate.
Yeah, my honest opinion is on this is that Albon's talent should never be in question. He's in Formula 1, so he clearly is a talented driver. Is he good enough to be in the second best car on the grid? No, he's not, because over a year now, it is pretty much a year in the performance, he's done nothing in that year to say, wow, I'm really deserving of this seat, and I'm not going to have it that, what about Brazil 2019? What about Austria? First race of the season. Yes, he did in those things, but he's relying on safety cars to get in positions, where he can challenge. The harsh fact is that the guys at the top of the grid, he just can't match pace-wise, and so therefore he shouldn't be in that seat in the 2021 season. But we'll wait and see. He might go on and have a good end to the season, but there is nothing I've seen in the first half of the season to say that Alex Albon should be starting the 2021 season in that Red Bull team.
Bam. On to Max Verstappen!
Yeah, not sitting on the fence on that one. Max Verstappen, frustrating. Frustrating, and this is the frustrating part of Formula 1. Because you have Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. For me, they are the 2 best drivers on the grid currently and would be having a titanic championship battle. And sport is all about brilliance. And this isn't Mercedes' fault, it's not Lewis Hamilton's fault. He is given the car and he goes out and performs what he needs to do to win races and win championships. Lewis Hamilton is one of the greatest of all time to do it. It's not his fault that others around him can't. But Red Bull, again, haven't been able to give Max Verstappen the car that is needed to challenge Lewis Hamilton over the course of a season. Ferrari have completely fluffed it in terms of that. And, it's incredibly frustrating because it's also meant to be entertaining as a sport. And what you want is, we saw little hints of it, Michael Schumacher crossing over with Senna. Then we had Schumacher versus Alonso going there. You could argue Senna versus Prost was an older driver with a newer driver coming in generation on that front. And Sebastian Vettel across with Fernando Alonso. So then different kind of generations. You want to see the best guys in the sport competing against each other. And Max Verstappen is doing everything he can at the moment. And when P3 is the best he can get in a race, because he literally couldn't have done anything more. Maybe the strategy would have pitted, but I think if he is pitted for softer tyres, then Mercedes would have just pitted.
Probably.
Because he wouldn't have been able to undercut them.
I was going to say, is that a note to say he didn't want to go for the extra pit at the end to see if he could do anything? But yeah, like you said, Mercedes probably just cover it off.
They would have literally gone, right, if Max Verstappen pits, Mercedes would have gone, brilliant, okay, we've now got the window, we can pit. Yeah. Mercedes didn't want to pit because, it would have been maybe difficult for them to make up that time, and they didn't need to risk it. They were in control of the race.
Yeah.
Max was the one who had to try and make things happen, and Max, I think, was just in literally acceptance mode. It's so frustrating to see such an amazing talent in Max Verstappen have just a boring season because he can't race anyone. He's so far ahead of everyone else in the field, but Mercedes have such a better car compared to the Red Bull. And the Red Bull is still better. Lewis Hamilton says it is a better car than it's given credit for, and I have no doubt than it probably is. But they don't have two drivers pushing it. And yeah, Max is just having lonely, boring races, and it just seems such a waste of a year.
Yeah, he's used the term boring race on more than one occasion in the post-race interviews. Because he literally sits in third or sits in second, and that's the race. Just hasn't got the car beneath him to challenge Lewis, but is miles ahead on ability and car performance against the rest. So, yeah.
Red Bull,
there we go. Mercedes, comfortable 1-2 at Spa. It's happened again.
I think you could probably cut and paste this clip from this race review podcast, and we could probably insert it in the next 2 weeks' races, and it will be relevant.
I'll make it good. Mercedes 1-2, unbelievable!
Who saw that coming?
Yeah, it's a cruise control for them. But the story isn't Mercedes 1-2. It's Valtteri Bottas. I know you didn't go too hard on Albon, so we went on hard on them yesterday in the Dry Raiders, but I'm fed up with it. He's not good enough. And he's got another year contract. It's just not entertaining. It makes complete logical sense for Mercedes to keep Bottas, but it's not entertaining. It's not like it's not a spectator's thing.
I think what you've got to go here is, look, I don't think anyone would have they would have been gone, okay, look, we can look ahead. But, Mercedes know early doors. Before offering Valtteri Bottas that contract and signing him up so early, they could have gone, we'll just wait off in here. And if we do maintain this dominance, then they become the most successful team in the history of the sport in terms of consecutive championships with constructors and drivers titles. It would then equal Lewis Hamilton onto Michael Schumacher's record. At the end of the day, though, they also have a responsibility to the sport in terms of it's not their responsibility to make the sport entertaining, but they're in this position where they are so far ahead of everybody else that they could literally have gone, because I think Max would have jumped in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I think if they said, Max, because he wants to compete, I think he went, Max, we're going to sign you up. 2021, here you come. I would have gone, as much as I rate George Russell, I would have been like, sack off, you're not ready yet.
Yeah.
You can still have a chance in the future because Hamilton will go in there, you can work out.
Hamilton's only got a few years left.
Right, exactly. In terms of that, they could have done that for the entertainment of the sport, because at the end of the day, you can go around and beating everyone, but if you're beating everyone without any competition, what does it actually mean? And also, they are the only ones in a position to challenge themselves. They can afford to just fight each other, because if they took Max out of Red Bull, there isn't anyone who would go into that Red Bull seat and get anywhere close to Mercedes, especially a Mercedes with Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. Yeah. So they could have just gone, let's end this set of rules and regulations that we've absolutely dominated and just have it with a fireworks spark.
Showpiece finale.
Put the two best guys, because, at the end of the day, they might be winning everyone, but they'll turn people off and people won't want to watch 2021.
They do. They do turn people off.
Because at the moment,
turn people away from the sport.
You've got the die-hard support thing, and F1 don't have to worry about that, because we will watch every race regardless, and we'll enjoy it. There were amazing midfield battles in that, and there were definitely things to enjoy it, and that's what we'll come around and talk about. There's always
that one driver that makes the race.
Yeah, but we're talking about F1 as a growing sport, and that is Liberty Media's role to do so, and they've done their bit in terms of that. Mercedes, I just don't see the benefit, and I feel it's so harsh because we don't get to see the best of Lewis Hamilton. Because I think Lewis Hamilton probably still would come out on top against Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
but I want to see him pushed every race.
Yeah.
And I want to see that battle, and it would be a hell of a battle, and I want to see how good Lewis Hamilton is. I don't want to see Lewis coming out at the end of the press conference going, yeah, no, that was a tough race today. Bollocks, basically. Yeah, no, it wasn't. Yes, as a racing driver, he would have had tyre management, which would have been an issue in terms of they would have had to manage that. Yes, there would have been challenging elements within that race, but at no point would Lewis Hamilton have felt under pressure in that race.
Yeah.
At no point.
And plus, if Max was his teammate, and then you can't, all the doubters that go, oh, he's only winning because he's in the best car. If he beats Max at Mercedes, then you can't question.
It would literally have been a win-win scenario.
Because Valtteri Bottas is there, everyone goes, well, it's just because of the car. He hasn't got a teammate to show him off. He's got a teammate to let him win, not to show off.
And it's so harsh because Bottas is a good driver. He is someone who is clearly talented. And, you know, I think he's doing a better job than, say, what Alex Albon is doing in the Red Bull seat, in terms of he does what Hamilton needs to do him, but he's the perfect teammate when you've got one or two other teams up there competing, and Hamilton needs that. When you're so far ahead like the McLarens were in the late 80s, you kind of need the two best drivers on the grid to just go hammer and tong at each other, just to kind of spice things up. And people still obviously look back at that time fondly because of the Prost versus Senna, and there was so much kind of great action between those two and iconic moments between those two in that time. But, you know, at the moment, Bottas is a talented driver, would be fantastic in the midfield, clearly there, but he's...
That's where he belongs.
But he's not in the elite bracket, is he?
No. It's... Turn 1 sums up every time. Bottas is a very good starter. He's very quick off the line. Well, he has not every time he's quick off the line, but he's pretty good at doing it. He was quick off the line again at Spa, but didn't make a move at all, and it was gone. Again, we saw it at Silverstone. Trying to think in Spain he messed up at the start. He just doesn't bring any challenge. And Mercedes are loving it, and that's why they signed him up for another year. But for the sport, for entertainment, like you say, it's just not good enough.
No. And it's the biggest frustration. You can't have a sport that is literally just going, well, we'll wait until 2022.
Yeah.
You can't just... If it was okay this season, I think this season would be looked on a lot better if the rule changes were coming in
Next
2021.
Year. Yeah.
But because obviously we have these same set of rules and regulations and there won't be any kind of major changes on there, it just literally feels like the other teams have checked out and they've gone, Mercedes, we'll concede this to Mercedes because the big rule changes, that's what we've got to nail. And no one has really taken that kind of punch or gamble on it. And it's just a bit like, meh. And it feels, we obviously are interested, but, you know, it feels like, why should we be interested when the other F1 teams... and obviously they are working hard. I'm clearly... They are working hard and they are trying to compete. But just the difference is they just seem to have checked out. They can't make up that much of
the engine power.
Yeah.
You know, it's where the big gains are made. And yeah, bam. But I think that sums up everyone.
I think it does.
Without laying into too many more people.
A bit of a ranty podcast, but I think it was just a breaking point of frustration. A brilliant track like Spa as well. And there was some brilliant action throughout. Brilliant overtakes in the midfield. There was action. Pierre Gasly's performance was superb. You know, Ocon making that late move on Albon as well. Really good. And, you know, it was interesting strategy seeing certainly on that front, but only if you really had two cars on the kind of alternate strategy. As a safety car probably nullified things again.
Another strategy demolished.
But yeah, it just... I think it was a frustration point.
Yeah, definitely.
Driver of the day.
Driver of the day.
Easy one, this one.
Daniel Ricciardo. Let's move on. We already said it. He was incredible.
Obviously, I think a lot of people will put Pierre Gasly there as well. And I think Pierre Gasly was absolutely brilliant. No doubt at all. But Daniel Ricciardo, to get as close to the Red Bull as he did with that tyre management, he literally, I think in the last 10 laps or so, reduced a 15-second gap to 2.
Yeah.
So that was super impressive how he kept his tyres. Managed to stay ahead of Albon at the start and just kept him in his pocket, got the moves that he needed done, didn't get held up in traffic too much by the Perez's and the Gaslys after the safety car restart, although it did hinder him from keeping up with Max, he said in his post-race interview. But yeah, clear and above, Daniel Ricciardo's best race, I think, ever in a Renault.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to Monza very much so.
Yeah, I think it could be even better for Daniel. He may even challenge for a podium. We'll wait and see.
Yeah.
Because he seems very happy with the balance of that car on the power circuits. But race rating?
I feel like I want to be harsh just because of Spa, the standard of racing we've had at Spa. Okay, it definitely wasn't the worst race of the season. But yet again, we had no strategy other than the 2 cars, which one of them was forced to go alternative. The other one just shot themselves in the foot and went alternative.
It's the problem with one-stop races, isn't it?
Yeah.
As soon as you can do that one stop, and if it all happens at the same time under safety car.
They even had the softer compounds, didn't they? They brought softer compounds. And still we had a one-stop race with no strategy. It's just the unfortunate time of the safety car, and that was that. But what's the lowest rating we've given so far this year?
I believe 6.
I feel like it's harsh to give it a 6, but just because we expect more from Spa, I want to give it a 6.
I think it's not as bad as what we say, but I think races always look reflected on poorly when there isn't any competition at the front of the field.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a 7 for the rest of the midfield action in goes and out. I think, is that what I gave Circuit de Catalunya? I think what's the lowest rating I've given was 6. I think was the British GP.
Yeah, you gave British
race 1, which was the same. Actually, for that, it's probably a 6 actually, because it's probably the same as that, where strategy was taken out of it, and the only thing, and the British GP actually did have the tyre blowouts, where this one didn't even have the tyre blowouts. So it's a shame because there were some brilliant stuff within Formula One. There was certain intrigue throughout, but at the end of the day, no one turned. It is difficult. You need competition all the way through the field, and when there is such a non-competition at the front end of the field, I think it affects everything else.
We even had at the back with the Ferrari Formula 1 Championship.
Yeah.
There was competition for podiums. Grosjean just lost out on the 3rd spot.
From fourth downwards, potentially even the 3rd downwards. With Ricciardo catching Max Verstappen.
There were battles throughout.
It was great. Just 1 and 2 was just such a no contest. And, people should say, well, you're not really expecting it. You know what you're going to get this season. Like going, well, that doesn't make it any better.
Yeah.
Type of thing. It still doesn't mean it's going to be a classic race because it's just such a no contest.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, anyway, that is that for the Race Review podcast. And obviously make sure you, hope you guys have enjoyed it and leave your thoughts in the comments below.
Did we mention anything about Anthony?
Antoine?
Yeah.
I think we did. I just spoke about Pierre Gasly.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
But that is it for today, guys. Obviously, leave your comments down below in what your thoughts were of the Grand Prix, what you're feeling of this F1 2020 season. What are your thoughts of some of the discussions we've had of like Daniel Kvyat, whether he'll be kind of continuing in F1, and obviously the non-contest at the front. It'll be fantastic to hear your thoughts as always. We'll be back tomorrow with the F1 Fantasy Weekly podcast with our review of the Belgian Grand Prix and obviously preview of Monza as well, giving those fantasy picks and rounding up the fantasy points. So make sure you tune in for that one. And if you're new around here, I said it at the start, or you haven't done so already, what can they do, Stephen?
They can like, subscribe and ding that bell.
Back in with the style points. Ding that bell, guys. But that's it from us today. We hope you've enjoyed it. So for now, you F1 fans, keep racing. And then